let's talk about movement. I have this nice tech display overlay, and I would like to have some graphics slide in, some text that says a few things. So I like gaming. Let's use Lato. That's a pretty font. Let's go to 150. Let's go back to 0 on the spacing. Let's go to black. Let's just do white. Now, when you would like to make the properties of a clip change in any way, you're going to be using what are called keyframes. So the history of this goes all the way back to the beginnings of animation. Basically, when you're drawing, you have to draw every frame that your character does, right? But eventually, at some point, there's so much work to be done that your main character animator has to be supervising the way that the character is acting throughout the entire story, and they can't it's too time consuming for a lead character animator to draw every single frame. So what eventually started happening is the lead character animator would draw a keyframe. They would draw a really, really beautiful, ideal expression that they wanted this character to portray in X moment in time. Then they would draw another keyframe a little bit while later, saying, this is where I want it to go. And then they would hand over just those 2 keyframes over to their assistant animator. And then the assistant animator would draw the 12 in-between frames to get from expression 1 to expression 2. You are the lead character animator, and the computer is the assistant editor. Basically, you're telling the computer, this is where I want it to be and to look at this exact frame, this keyframe. And then, this many frames later, I want it to look like this instead. So then the computer does the work to make all of the frames in between. It basically connects point 1 to point 2. Now, it's not as smart as a good assistant animator. So in addition to making those keyframes, you're going to then have to tell the computer how to think, how to do those in-between frames. So this applies in sound. This applies in motion graphics. You're going to use keyframes anytime you want to make any kind of a property change dynamically during the playback of the clip. If I want this text to be a lot smaller, I can just make it smaller. And that's just how it's going to be the whole time. But if I would like it to be bigger at the beginning of the clip, and then I would like it to be smaller later, I have to tell the computer at what point I want it to be smaller and at what point I want it to be bigger. I'm going to go over to this timer, toggle animation. You turn this on, now we're going to have keyframes. So I'm going to turn on animation, and it's going to automatically make me my first keyframe. Now, at this precise moment in playback, this is what my text is going to look like. So I want my text to later on get smaller. So I can hit this diamond here to add a keyframe, and then I'm going to slide this down to make it smaller. So now if I go previous keyframe and then I hit play, it gets smaller. We made it smaller! Hooray! And you can do this with anything. You can do this to change the position or the scale or the rotation or the opacity, or quite frankly, almost any other effect that you add. So we have our text going from bigger to smaller. It looks kind of ugly. It's just very straightforward. It's this big, and then every single frame is changing until it's now this big. So let's talk about a bunch of ways, things to think about to make this look prettier. Easing in and easing out is a key principle of animation. There are 12 of them from the founders of Disney, and easing in and easing out, or slow in and slow out, is one of them. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to, on this front one, add ease out so that the out frames after this keyframe get ramped. And you can see how it starts slow and speeds up over time. Then we're going to hit ease in. Now, the reason we do that instead of just Bezier, look at the difference. If I get rid of those ease in and ease out, and then I just do Bezier, the process is not as smooth. It will go from not doing anything, doing something rapidly, and then changing things up. We want this to look as smooth as possible. So easing out will start from 0 and ramp all the way in. And then we're going to ease in those frames before. So now you can see that feels so much smoother. Now, if we want to exaggerate it even more, we can zoom in a little bit and we can drag these handles. And now you can see it slows and speeds up quickly and then slows down a lot more. So a lot more of the time spent in the animation is very slow. And then there's a quick movement in the middle. It feels nice. Another thing that you can do is you can overcorrect. So you can add some keyframes for it to go farther than you want to and then pop it back. Our ending keyframe is 56. So if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I make it even smaller than 56, let's say I go 52, that means that it's going to go smaller and then pop out to big again. Now it's a little stuttery because this needs an ease out. That's really nice. It feels like it has some anticipation and then it falls back, right? There's some follow through. It gives it even a little bit more weight. Another thing that we can do is its scaling is just kind of random. It's kind of just going straight into the center of the screen, which feels weird. So something we've never talked about before is an anchor point. And you can see, it's kind of hard to see because of this thing, but this little crosshair right here, this is the place where it's attached to. So this is the place where it will scale into. This is the place where it will rotate from. So if you move the anchor point, you will move how it works. So let me just show very clearly. If I rotate, you can see it's rotating around this center point right here. That's the point. So if I move the anchor point to be up here, watch what happens to our rotation. We're now rotating around that point way up there. And the anchor point affects the scaling as well. So if I move the anchor point so that it's on the G, sort of in the middle of itself, the scaling will feel a bit more natural because it won't be like weirdly scaling sideways. It'll just scale into itself. Feels way better, doesn't it? Yeah, that's awesome. I don't know why I keep doing the sound effect. So that's scale. Let's move these keyframes a little bit, and then let's have it slide into the frame to begin with. So let's start animation, and then let's drag this keyframe to about here, because we want it to end here, right? So a few frames before this, we want it to go too far. I'm going to do the overcorrection thing again. So if 748 is how it normally is, let's go just a little bit farther. All right, now let's go to the beginning. Oh, get out here. I don't use spatial interpolation as often. Temporal interpolation is usually the way to go. So I'm going to hit Bezier. And then for this one, I'm going to hit ease out. For the end one, I'm going to hit ease in. And then for this one, I'm going to hit ease in and ease out. And then I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And I'm going to select all three of these. And then I'm going to do the drop down. Now you can see we have our easing in and out now. And they start from a base. It starts from a baseline. But it's still fairly abrupt and linear. So I want to smooth that out. I want it to go real slow into it. And then I want it to go real slow out of it. Let's see how that looks. Okay. It feels really abrupt right here because we're slowing down so much. So I'm actually going to get rid of the Bezier on this one. Seems like this should be linear. Let's see how that looks. It's better. It's definitely better. I want these to basically meet in their action, I think. Oh, yeah. That's way better. See? Because, so now the movement carries through. I think it accelerates a bit too much. I'm going to pull this back a little bit. You see, I've pulled it so far that the movement is popping up to compensate. So I'm going to slow it down a little bit so that it doesn't have to. And then I'm going to lower both of these so that we don't have to speed up quite so much. See, you can see the arc of the movement. Nice. It feels so good. Okay, so if you look at these linearly, it's just an abrupt spike in movement, right? So if I add an ease out, watch what happens. It's created that smoothing. So you can do that on your own. All you have to do is drag this down so that it matches, and then drag it over a little bit. So if you drag this down and drag it out just a tiny bit, you've now done what the ease out does. So you could do it manually. It's just, for me, it's easier to start by adding the ease out and then continuing the process here. So those are the basics of animation in Premiere, and you basically just use those for anything that you want. This clip underneath with the video game controller, it has motion options just like the text does. So if I click scale and then I play a little bit and then I zoom 150% into this controller and then I go Bezier and then I do a ease out and I do an ease in and then I hit the drop down arrow and make these a little bit more extreme and then I hit play. Speed this up a little bit. And that's all there is to it. If it has a little timer next to it with animation options, you can dynamically change and add keyframes.